More than 60 charities are demanding the closure of the Bibby Stockholm barge. We're going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an article from The Guardian with the headline that more than 60 charities are demanding the closure of the Bibby Stockholm barge. MPs and charities say asylum seekers paying an appalling price in the wake of a suspected suicide on board. So there was a shocking story this week where allegedly an asylum seeker on board the barge had committed suicide. We don't know that for certain at the time of this recording, as it is still being investigated, but someone has died on the barge. That has been confirmed. Now, how and why this happened obviously still needs to remain a mystery, but we have to remember one thing. Originally, when the barge was set up and originally when people were brought on board, it was found to have a certain substance in the water that was considered extremely dangerous and could potentially kill them, and they had to be removed from the barge. Not all safety checks were carried out on the barge as well before bringing the asylum seekers on board as well. This was also another issue. The union, the National Fires Union, had also stated that this was not, that he had not finished completing, not all checks were carried out either. So there were a lot of things that were not done before putting people on this barge. Now we're going to read into this and see. I don't know, as of right now, it's recording. Am I to assume that they've done every single checks? Probably not. But for me, it's for them, it's a case of we've got to put them on there to show them that we're tough on immigration, that we're tough on asylum seekers, that we're going to bring down the numbers and show them who's boss, all that kind of image. And this barge, from pictures and images that we have seen in the past, essentially looks like a prison. And the thing is, you have to remember this, taking this into account, guys. These are not prisoners. They have not committed any crimes in this country. The reason that some of the vast majority of them may have come from boats or have hidden themselves under trucks or whatever to come to the UK is because there is no legal route for them to come to the UK. I have to keep stressing this point because there's always people who come across my channel who don't know that. There is no legal route for migration. Now, many people have argued that we have too much migration. I think there's two factors that you need to bear in mind as well when you look at the numbers. The first point, of course, is that we have taken a lot from Hong Kong. That's the first point. The second point as well is we've taken a lot from Ukraine. These two factors need to be implemented when you look at the numbers of migrations. So I suspect that the numbers may go down next year because we probably will not be taking as many Ukrainians or Hong Kongs next year. I could be wrong, but that's where the large surge, that's where those factors have played a surge into it as well. And if you really think, that we have an overcrowding situation, you should check out Germany, because they really do have problems there in Germany. Now, on the barge itself, guys, if it is safe, if it is deemed a suitable accommodation, if they are well looked after and treated and everything is fine, then perhaps people would not be up in arms about this. But when you have 60 charities, that's volunteers who give up their own time for the work that they do. Yeah, volunteers, nobody's paying these charities. Yeah, that's their time, their money going into the causes that they do. Demanding the closure of the Bibby Stockholm barge. You have to think that, is this a suitable place for any human to be stored or looked after, or whatever the premise of the words that you want to put. I think that's really important context you need to put into mind when you think about it. 60 charities. Now, you're going to turn around and tell me that all these charities are wrong and it's perfectly all right for them to be on there? Don't think so. I think there's, and we are spending a lot of taxpayer money on the Bibby Stockholm barge as well. Is this value for money as well? Is your taxpayer money worth this? Is another question we need to be asking ourselves, guys. So let's read into it. So more than 60 charities have demanded the immediate closure of the Bibby Stockholm barge used to accommodate asylum seekers after a man died following a suspected suicide there on Tuesday. The call comes in a letter published by The Guardian signed by 65 charities and 3 Labour MPs. Charities include the Refugee Action, Refugee Council, Care4Calais and Refugees at Home. The MPs are Nadia Whittome, Johnson and Olivia Blake. The signatories write, for those on board the Bibby Stockholm feels like a prison. It is cramped, restricted and segregated. The barge is no place to accommodate people who have fled violence, persecution and torture, many of whom are traumatised and isolated and unable to get the help and specialist support they need. Their mental health has deteriorated and some have felt suicidal. They add that people on board are paying an appalling price and condemn the $22.5 million that the government officials this week admitted that was costing to operate the barge. Is that a week? Is that worth it? £25.5 million. That's how much. Is that worth it, guys? Is that worth us paying? Ask yourself. Is that worth paying? These funds should be spent on providing people, asylum seekers, safe housing in the community. They said. Yeah. When COVID struck, when we had the pandemic, guys, magically all the homeless people had accommodation. Just like that. They were off the street. You want to know why that happened? Because the governments and councils were forced to act because they were afraid of coronavirus spreading. And just like that, they found homes and hostels, all places for them to keep themselves nice and warm, just like that. It's almost as if, if the will is there, something can be done. If you just wonder, if because that happened, if the will was done to get those homeless people off the streets and into accommodations, why can we not get the will done to ensure that all these asylum seekers are able to find housing communities too? And the other thing as well is that money could be used to invest in our Home Office to ensure that we have more people processing the asylum seeker claims so that we can clear the backlog as well. The incredibly stupid amount of backlog that could be done. But we don't want to do that for some reason. Along with the demand for the immediate closure of the barge, the signatories are calling for an independent inquiry into the deaths so that lessons are learned and those responsible are held accountable. This country must never again house those who come to our shores seeking safety in such an inappropriate and inhumane place, they conclude. After the apparent suicide of an unidentified resident on Tuesday, asylum seekers said conditions had deteriorated since up to 300 people were moved onto the barge. Their concerns include rules that require them to go through airport-style security and body searches, even if they wanted to step outside for a cigarette, a deterioration in the quality of food, and the shortages of those at the end of the queue. The boat is like a prison. More and more things are going wrong, said one asylum seeker. It's very, very important to make this distinction as well before people make this perception, is that a lot of asylum seekers, migrants, those who are in hotels, barges, other accommodations, right? They are trying very hard, the companies that the private companies who run these, to restrict and keep them quiet from talking to journalists and media, because they don't want the media knowing how these people are being seriously treated. They want to keep it quiet because they don't want people to know that they're being treated inhumane and abhorrent. The government insists that the barge represents a better value for money than the £8 million a day being spent on hotels to accommodate asylum seekers, and say they are planning to close 50 of the hotels by early next year. In a letter to Parliament's Home Office Affairs Committee this week, Sir Matthew Rycroft, Permanent Secretary at the Home Office, said he was not yet able to provide the latest cost per person per night for a figure on the barge, he said. The value for money assessment is currently being updated to give the latest per person per night costs, and we will provide details in the new year once this is complete. The latest briefing about the controversial barge from multi-agency forums that include the Home Office, Dorset Council, police and barge operators, dated the 28th of November, present an upbeat view of life on the barge for asylum seekers, which is at odds with the versions of events provided to the Guardian by those on board. These conditions are getting worse and worse, said one of the asylum seekers. We are terrified they will unlock the boat and sail it away to Rwanda. So who do you believe, guys? Who do you believe, the Home Office or the Guardian's analysis here? I think it's up to you to decide whether you want to believe it or not. But in my opinion, guys, it's really important that they need to be looked after and given the well-being and care as human beings. Now, I've heard some people coming in on comments have made comments, and you're right, and people have rightly pointed this out. They're saying, well, what about our own people? And you're absolutely right. British people are not being well looked after either. But your faults are not blaming it on the asylum seekers. Your faults are blaming at the 13 years of Conservative government is where you need to point the finger at. And if you think that your problems are because of them, then you really don't know your history. You really don't. 13 years of austerity, cuts to public services over the last 13 years, cuts to the NHS, cuts to your schools, cuts to everything, which is why your life is worse off. Austerity is what's damaged and what has killed our country. Not these people. These people who have come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And there are people here who want to come to our country and make a difference, who want to contribute to our society. And they cannot do that. They are not allowed to do that. Why? Why can't we put them to work? Why can't we give them jobs? Why can't we make them contribute to our economy? Our economy, which is doing absolutely crap right now. Why can we not do that? Because the Conservatives don't want us to do that. They would be happy. Yeah, they would be happy to get rid of all these people and ship them off to Rwanda. No morality whatsoever. And I get it. I understand the upset and frustrations that we have in our own society. And I have talked about these in separate videos. I talked about the homelessness, about the tents being taken away. If you've not seen that video, go check that video out. I've had many videos about councils struggling to find people homes and accommodation. So don't get me wrong, I talk about very different topics. And it's not just immigration. But this is one of many faults and failures of the Conservative government that they have had. Now, are Labour perfect? No. Do they have flaws? Yes. Should we be wary of them? Yes, of course we should. But you have a choice between the rotten apple that you've had to deal with for the last 13 years, or you take a chance with Labour. Now, if you don't want to vote for either, that is your choice. But one thing is for sure, you're going to have one of those parties in charge at the next general election. Now, it likely says it's going to be Labour. Now, that does not mean that Labour are going to get a free ride. I will hold Labour to the fire just on this channel, just like I hold Wes Streeting for his disgusting remarks, what he said about the NHS. I'm not a Labour supporter. I'm not a Conservative supporter. I sit on the centre ground. You want to call me left of wing, right wing, whatever, that's your prerogative. But I call what I see, what I read and what I hear. And I hope you guys do too. So, what do you guys make of this? Do you think the Bibby Stockholm barge is unfit for purpose? Is it worth the taxpayer money that we pay for it? If it is not, then what is the alternative? What should we do instead? If you have ideas and solutions, let me know in the comment section down below. Let's have a constructive conversation about this rather than just outright slanging people. Let's have a think about this, yeah? If we want to change this country for the better, if we want to reduce the levels of migration, if we want to make our society better, what can we do here, yeah, that we don't want to avoid? Because nobody wants any deaths. Nobody wants to hear about a person dying or potentially committing suicide. We don't want to hear those stories. We want to prevent them. What can we do to change that? That's the question I like to ask. So if you can, guys, before you make a comment, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. And if you want to financially support me, you can do so by buying me a coffee or joining me on Patreon. Thanks again for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.